Good evening, everyone. My name is Valeria. I want to welcome you to the last session of the Community for Mentor Training, the Migrant Justice Edition, which is organized by the Madhu Verma Migrant Justice Center with the support of Food for All. For our last session, we're very honored to have two guest speakers with us today, Tracy, Glynn, and Niger, Saravia, who would be presenting What About Food Security of Migrant Workers in New Brunswick. Tracy Glynn is a founding board member of the Madhu Verma Migrant Justice Center. Her activism and scholarship are focused on supporting communities affected by resource extraction, migration and border policies, and inadequate healthcare access. She's the National Director of Operations and Projects for the Canadian Health Coalition and also holds a regular teaching appointment in the Environmental Society program at St. Thomas University. Niger Saravia spends his time organizing migrant workers in New Brunswick. Based in Miramichi, he is an organizer with Migrant Worker Alliance for Change. Born in El Salvador, he came to Canada in 2011 after living in the US for 11 years, where he worked with undocumented migrants from Latin America. Saravia's team is supporting migrant workers in New Brunswick, especially in the province seafood industry, and calling for permanent residency status for all, those with temporary status, including temporary foreign workers. Before I pass it along to our guest speakers, we also want to let you know that we have Patrick Murphy as our interpreter. If you go to the three dots below, you'll be able to see the interpreter option. And we're also going to allocate 10 minutes for Q&A at the end of the session. This session is also being recorded, so if you don't want to be recorded, feel free to keep your cameras off and send your questions in the chat. Now, without further ado, I pass it to you, Tracy.
Thanks, Valeria. I'm just going to, I hope you can all see my screen. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. So you might have seen the notice for tonight. Teresa DeVore Hall was supposed to be presenting, but she can't join us tonight. So I'm filling in for her. So yeah, thank you all for joining us. Yeah, tonight the Madhu Verma Migrant Justice Center, the Madhu Center for short, is excited to announce the launch of our sanctuary network with this webinar on food security, with our partner collaborator, Niger Saravia, with the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change. So the Madhu Center, I know many of you here tonight know us, but just quickly, it was founded in 2022 after a dozen trafficked migrant workers ended up in Fredericton, and they found some of us and they needed our emergency support. So our center supports migrant workers and others with precarious immigration status, with different things like immigration applications, labor complaints, healthcare access, and housing. We run a legal clinic with our staff lawyer, Avery Judson, supported with two caseworkers, Nuria Mirabant and Christian Sanabria. We have UMB law students and STU human rights students and and other students, the UMB arts 3,000 and 4,000 students. And so besides providing services to migrant workers, we advocate for reforms and systemic changes aimed at protecting the rights, equality, dignity of migrants. So we regularly appear in the media, providing commentary on issues affecting migrant workers and others with precarious immigration status. We engage in research, including with the Temporary Foreign Workers Maritimes Research Project. If you want to know more about that, you can go to tfwmaritimes.ca. In our housing report by Amy Floyd, who is, I see here with us tonight, and Aditya Rao and myself, we noted that New Brunswick has the second highest rate of food insecurity of the 10 provinces. This rate increased from 2021 to 2022. So since at least 2022, laid off migrant workers at the province's seafood processing plants have been turning to food banks to eat. And as we noted, poor nutrition and unhealthy, overcrowded housing combine to negatively affect the health outcomes of migrant workers. We also have a number of campaigns on the go, like Medicare on arrival for temporary foreign workers, because healthcare delayed is healthcare denied. We support the end to close work permits that ties workers to their employer. We believe everyone should have rights to labor mobility. We support status for all, that's permanent residency, to all those who have temporary status, including migrant workers. So after a few months of operating, we realized the great need to return to our work building a space for sanctuary. Our province is home to people of different migration statuses. The Madhu Center has noted discrimination based on immigration status when it comes to accessing essential services such as healthcare, food, housing. So we applied to the Canadian Race Relations Foundation. That's a Crown corporation that is tasked with eliminating systemic racism in Canada. And we got funding from them to build this sanctuary network in New Brunswick. So the sanctuary network aims to ensure people with precarious immigration status in the province of New Brunswick, so like migrant workers, asylum seekers, refugee claimants, the undocumented. We want, these folks to have safe and timely access to doctors, dentists, counselors, social workers, housing programs, and other essential services. So when migrant workers have come to us in crisis, we work hard to find them doctors, dentists, counselors, for example. And many people in our province have stepped up, including the Food Depot and New Brunswick's food banks, folks like Stefan Sirois. So you'll hear more about our work to address the food insecurity of migrant workers in Niger, Saravia's presentation. So our center has found, generous service providers willing to donate their services, but we have identified a great need to more rapidly respond to someone in crisis, in emergency situations. So we came up with this sanctuary network idea that would facilitate free pro bono provision of safe, non-judgmental, anti-oppressive services. So we are asking service providers, all kinds of service providers, to join our network and incorporate the principle that access to essential services, that it be determined by need and not migration status. So in practice, we ask service providers not to ask for proof of citizenship or information regarding immigration status when people need services. So in some kinds of services, this is more of a practice, like when, we are asking service providers to treat all information regarding immigration status as confidential and to not share it with the Canada Border Services Agency, the CBSA, or Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, IRCC. Not the responsibility of service providers, healthcare workers, or the police to make such reports. Sharing such information could result in detention and deportation, and it has. We have supported people in our community who have been detained or deported because a service provider reported them to the CBSA, and they did so not knowing the full consequences of doing that. So there is some good news here too in New Brunswick. New Brunswick's no longer jailing immigrants in its provincial jails, having joined other provinces in Canada in making this move, since not having immigration status is not a criminal offense. And that bears repeating because, we hear this in the media over and over again with certain politicians, especially south of the border, but also I think here in Canada, that describe immigrants as criminals, and so there's no need to detain people who don't have status in our country. So service providers willing to join the Sanctuary Network can have their name and contact information added to our confidential database that we've already created, and so that we'll be more able to put people in touch with a service provider when they need it. And this database will be kept unpublished and will only be used by our staff. As a service provider, if you are one, and if you feel comfortable having your information published online, we will also add you to our services once it's created. So as the network establishes itself, we hope to provide educational and advocacy opportunities to our members that also advance our goals and making sure that everyone in New Brunswick has access to the services that they need. So this isn't just about providing charity, finding building a list of people that are willing to provide charity. It's about service providers also joining our movement for migrant justice and becoming strong champions of that. So offering services to migrants without immigration status is both legal and ethical. You're not obligated to report their status to immigration authorities. It's about putting people first and protecting their dignity and rights. So we are about to launch our digital knowledge hub. It will be an extra button on our website. We were hoping to do that for tonight, but we didn't quite get there, but we will soon. And this place will be, it will be an online space where you can better understand how service providers can offer essential services to migrants in need and to learn about how to join our network. And we also, just to say too, that we're looking for public champions. So if you're already in support of this, feel free to reach out to us. So I'm just trying to move ahead my slides, and you can reach us at info@madhucenter.ca. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Niger, who's going to talk to us about the food insecurity being experienced by migrant workers and our work to for not just food security, but food sovereignty, food justice.
Welcome, everyone. So I work with the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change, which is an organization, membership-based, migrant-led that support migrants across Canada to access service and rights. And we support the formation of migrant workers peer support group at the workplaces, communities, schools, in person and online. And we're pretty much more like a democratic union. We operate phone lines, WhatsApp hotlines, in English and in Spanish for migrant without permanent resident status. So we respond to all questions that we receive, including about employment, housing, immigration, healthcare, and other social services anywhere in Canada. As we're connected with other organizations across the country. Madhu Verma is one of them in New Brunswick. So the Migrant Workers Alliance for Change support workers in 5 different sectors: farm workers, Spanish and English, care workers, migrant students, fish workers, and undocumented workers. So basically anyone who doesn't have any permanent resident status in Canada, we support them. But who are these migrants in Canada? There are 2 types of migrants in Canada: those with a closed work permit and those with a permanent resident status. Those who have a closed work permit have few rights, and some of them basically no rights. Permanent immigrants have access to, those who have permanent resident status have access to rights and benefits. So today I'm going to be talking about those who are migrants who don't have benefits. Last year, most of the migrants who have work permits reached out to 1.7 million new permits were issued just last year. And that's divided between migrant in agriculture, care workers, fishery workers, and those with the closed work permit. And we also have the international students with open work permits, which includes spouses, children, and their families as well. So 600,084 plus study permits were issued last year. And we also have in this category more than 150,000 refugee claimants, which in total, just last year, people with valid permit reached up to 2.5 million. This without counting the 500,000 undocumented workers in Canada. So as you can see, Canada is shifting to the temporary workers when it comes in the labor market. But some of these migrants, they work in different sectors. Most of the people who come and work in agriculture, they come from the Latin American countries, Caribbean, and others, and they come under the program, the Seasonal Agriculture Worker Program, and the TFW, which is a Temporary Foreign Worker Program, which existed for more than 58 years. So clearly, these temporary programs base are not temporary anymore. And Some of the workers, they come primarily to agriculture, which is the SAP, seasonal agriculture worker program, in two streams. One is the low wage stream, and the other one is the high wage stream. So Canada has expanded its reliance on temporary foreign workers, not only in the agriculture industry, but also in fisheries, service industry like hotels, restaurant, healthcare, cleaning, and janitorial services. In some of the top countries where the TFW comes are from Jamaica, Mexico, and the Philippines, Guatemala. Now there's people coming from Honduras, Nicaragua, in the South America, as well some people from Europe. So when these people come, they come with a closed work permit, which means the employer's name is written on their work permit. This makes them vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. And speaking about their rights means losing their jobs, being evicted, or being deported. So without permanent resident status, we have seen and we will see more workers in situation of exploitations. The three main provinces where the temporary foreign workers comes is Ontario, mostly under the fruit and vegetables, the wine industry, greenhouses, and BC. They come to grow berries, but also work in the greenhouse and the wine production. Quebec is another one for the vegetables and greenhouses. And these workers, because they come with a closed work permit, they face lots of abuses. Some of the issues that workers face when they come under these programs are labor abuses like human rights violations, like discrimination, sexual harassment, physical and psychological abuse, breach of contract. We've seen a lot of this happening in New Brunswick, reprisals and terminations, lack of access to income as a result of the breach of contract, and mobility issues. We're seeing an increase on mobility issues in New Brunswick, where the employer is telling the workers they're not allowed to leave after 10 p.m., or they're not allowed to have friends, or they're not allowed to join or participate in activities with organizations, churches, and other community-based organizations in this case. So workers are not reporting the injuries because they are afraid to be sent back or to lose their job. But they also are suffering abuses from their recruitment agencies. They're not receiving the right information. For example, some of the recruitment agencies are promising high wages, permanent residence, and are charging a lot of money to these workers to come here for their services. They're threatening workers too, that if they don't behave at work, they'll be banned from Canada. Also, as Tracy was mentioning, they have housing issues, healthcare issues. New Brunswick is really bad for the healthcare for the migrant workers. They have to wait for 1 year. In other provinces, they have to wait for 3 or 4 months. So there's a lot of work that we need to do in New Brunswick regarding to the healthcare. But migrants in New Brunswick, in the Atlantic in particular, we have seen an expansion in the last 7 years, more so after the global pandemic. Like in 2023, last year, 4,410 work permits were issued to temporary foreign workers, of whom more than 2,500 were in seafood. The rest were in agriculture, food services, truck driving, and the rest. So truck driving, and this is not counting the international students. So these workers come here with the closed work permit that it goes from 6 weeks up to 6 months. And while migrant workers, are starving during the low season in New Brunswick, the seafood industry exported last year 1.68 million, according to Canada Fish and Seafood Trade. The industry was able to reach this level of exportation because of the migrant workers. In 2022, 68 workers contacted us. They were from the Acadian Peninsula, from the same workplace. They had no work for more than 3 weeks. They were desperate, starving. So they contacted us looking for food. And with the support of Food Depot, we managed to get gift cards to these workers. However, the employer was angry and threatened these workers that if they did not return those gift cards to the food banks, they were going to be in trouble. That means they were going to go to, they were going to lose their jobs. They were going to be evicted, and they were going to being sent back to Mexico. So some of the workers called me and they were crying. They wanted to return the cards. And this shows the level of controls that employer have over workers. The same year, we started to receive calls from other areas where workers were in the same situation. So this was telling us that it's not just one employer who's doing this with their workers, but it's a common practice in the seafood industry. So in 2023, we decided to create a distribution program with the support of Madhu, Verma, and the Food Depot. And we created a system where the employers are not able to find out which workers are receiving the food assistance. So therefore, when we deliver the food, it has to be in locations that are not visible to employers, because we know that this could result in termination of employment, eviction, and even deportation. Since we started this program, we have distributed more than 300 boxes of food. However, it's important to note that resources are not available for migrant workers in the province. Every season, we have to leave many workers without this assistance because there is not a provincial program in place to support migrant workers, and we do not have the resources to provide food to each worker in the province. The period that the workers are basically not working is basically the end of June, beginning of July, the 2 weeks of July, end of August, and the first week of September. Those are the 2 weeks, the two periods that we're seeing workers asking for food. So we are hoping that this program will continue next year because there is a need in the migrant workers community for food assistance. But this food is not the food that they used to eat in their back in their countries. This food is not appropriate. It's not appropriate for the cultures that we see in with the countries where the migrant workers come from. But still, this is just like a little bit of food to mitigate the needs of the workers. So we know that, and workers have been telling us that some of the solutions that they see is that the government has to enforce the laws that are in place to make sure the employers are paying the workers while they're not working. Most of the contracts that we have seen promise the workers that they will get paid a minimum of 30 hours per week, even if they don't work. But so far, only 2 companies are doing this in New Brunswick. One of them, we managed to organize this company in 2022, where workers were starving, so they came together, we supported them, and they managed to sit at the table with the employer and get a new contract. This is one that the workers won this new contract. So as a result, they're getting paid a minimum of 30 hours per week. But migrant workers are also telling us that that's not just the solution. That's the beginning. That's a step of the right direction. They have identified that the only way that they can be free and assert their rights without fear of reprisals is to have a regularization program, which is a status for all foreign migrant workers. We also, as an organization, we have identified that there is a need for a regularization program for undocumented workers. And this program must be ongoing, in ongoing basis, so that those who become undocumented in the future can apply and to change, restructure the entire immigration system. So there is no one in the future who can become or who will become undocumented. We're asking to permanent resident status for more than 1.7 million of migrants in Canada, because that will give them the opportunity to leave any abusive employer without fear of eviction or deportation. And workers will be able to assert their labor rights. Workers will be able to use the healthcare system. Workers will be able to speak up against abuses or harassment at the workplaces. So we have a call to action, and we're calling on the community members to organize anti-racist pro-immigrant events in the communities. We're calling as a campaign with the Migrant Rights Network, which is a national coalition of 40 organizations that were fighting for permanent resident status. We are calling for the government to implement a regularization program, but we're also inviting the community to be part of these events. So we have Tuesday week from November 1st to November 10th to oppose racism and call for a regularization for a status for all. And the other actions that you can do is call your local MP and ask them to grant permanent resident status to all migrants, and participate in any actions promoted by local migrant groups. But the bottom line here is that we need to come together as a society to stop these abuses at the workplaces, stop these abuses at the municipal level, provincial level, and the federal level. So we need to unite and say and tell to the government, enough is enough of these migrant workers losing their jobs, being afraid of speaking up about those abuses that they're suffering on a daily basis. So we need to come together and do that as a society. So I think this is my presentation. I didn't want to go over more time because I know some of you already have been working in this with migrant workers for a couple of years now. And so we just, this is the end of my presentation. If you have questions, I think we have 10 or 20 minutes for questions. Unless if you want me to expand in one particular area, I can do that.
Thank you, Niger, for that, for keeping us up to date and advocating for migrant workers. And as you said, it's a big issue, and they do face a lot of discrimination and racism, and we don't really hear about that. So thank you. We have one question in the chat, which is, do you see any hope with the new government in New Brunswick?
There is always hope. Hope is the last thing that we lose. And when we lose hope, that means we're done. Yes, and we're hoping to meet with the new government and talk about the issues that migrant workers are going through, and to create a strategy and work together in a way to develop, not just to get rid of those bad policies that are preventing migrant workers to access services in New Brunswick, but at the same time to create a way that the province can guarantee workers' safety and security when they come here.